Hi, and welcome to the Divinely Inspired Woman podcast. I am your host, Patricia Wald-Hopkins. I am a modern mystic, and I am here to share with you the beautiful wisdom and stories from women that desire to lead their lives inspired by the divine within them. The divinely inspired woman is devoted to walking the path of her soul's calling, tuning into the divinity within to navigate life with ease and grace through all circumstances. She cultivates beauty in her daily life. She is here to share the most authentic self each day through thick and thin. So I hope you'll enjoy our show today and that you will leave with an infusion of inspiration for your soul and for your day and living your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Divinely Inspired Woman. I'm Patricia Wald-Hopkins, your host, and I have a very special guest with me here today, SpiritBird Holton. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So good to see you. Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation with you here today. I know you've been up to a lot of good things, and I'm just going to share a little bit with our audience here about you. SpiritBird is a healer, plant medicine facilitator, a best-selling author, and founder of Shaman School. That's so cool. She helps healers and leaders open and master their spiritual gifts and bring them into the 3D for impact, abundance, and for fun. Yes, and for fun. I love that part too. That's great. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about, what is in the now for you? What is going on with you that you want to share?
Sure. Well, I'll pick it up a little bit about offers in Shaman School. So a few years back when I started Shaman School, I remember that was like, I could feel it coming in. It was like over the course of a couple of years, I kept playing around with, like, I felt like I had some body of work that I wanted to share, and I have a gazillion different interests.
Yeah.
And I kept playing around with like offering pieces, and I think I had to overcome a big piece around just giving myself permission to offer what it was that I actually wanted to do, which was to teach shamanic healing and teach healers in this particular way and help them really find their own medicine and learn how to use it. And that happened to be the structure, the avenue that worked well for me and that I understood, and that also brought me a lot of joy. And so once I kind of gave myself permission, I began to offer that. And then that basically started a few years, like it took off really fast. I was super excited about it. I mean, I still am. I still absolutely love it. And then I hit this period over the winter where, I don't know, something shifted. Something didn't quite feel like it was in alignment. I couldn't tell what it was. I kind of got myself into this weird space or weird slump. And I started feeling like I don't want to quite say forcing things, but it just like something was off. And at that point, I had a few different offers, and I will work privately with people, but the main forward-facing thing that I was doing was Shaman School. And I realized in it, like I was really gripping on to it having to be done a certain way and look a certain way. And also that it was going to be like my highest level offer. And so I was like totally attached to this.
Yeah.
And it started to get frustrating. Well, actually, just to kind of dive into, I guess, to be transparent about the business end of things and how it was working, I was feeling conflicted because the particular way that I teach it is a little bit different than other shamanic programs. There's definitely going to be some overlap, but it's also different. So I kept being conflicted between like, is this a course for people that are sort of new to this work, or is this a course for people that are like actually already in, like kind of advanced healers already out there doing their work and looking to grow. And it's true for both, but I kind of just like, I couldn't figure out who I wanted it to be for anymore, because I think I was ready to grow and do some different things too.
Yeah.
And so in retrospect, I was trying to shove everything into shaman school.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do that.
I also had it in my head that was the way to be successful in business, is to have like one thing and be really clear about that one thing. And that's what you do. And I'm not exactly sure what shifted, but some of it was from an offer that kind of came into my awareness over the winter that I got really excited about, and I wanted to do something new. Yeah. But long story short is that's kind of what happened, is like, as I finally let go of that, which was a little scary, because I thought that if I let go of my control or thoughts around what shaman school was supposed to be for and what it's going to be like and its structure in my business, I was afraid if I let that go, that then it might mean that I'm like not supposed to do shaman school anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where all of I know. I was like, no.
Your
then
baby.
What will happen?
Yeah.
And I realized once I kind of just let it go and dropped like trying to hyper control it and just give myself some space to play again in my business, then it became clear, I actually have just other offers in me that are ready to come out now too. And they don't actually have to be a conflict with shaman school. So said from like recent clarity.
That feels like a lot more, you have more freedom to express yourself.
Totally.
Rather than one set channel, you can now kind of switch channels, but it's all on the same theme though, right? So it's kind of medicine, right? Shamanic medicine. I know you mentioned shamanic archetypes. Is that figure into a lot of your different offers, even though it's not just the straight school?
It does. Yeah. So I love working with the shamanic archetypes. I think because, for a couple of reasons, they tend to get skipped over in a lot of other programs. I'm not really sure why, especially because like archetypal work is, honestly, it's really popular.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
But it's because it's also like a really great tool. And that's what I loved about it. And for me, this is what made like a huge shift for me in my healing work and my growth and my ability to work better with others, was understanding and I use the wheel to as a structure for the archetypes. So just sort of understanding the main kind of energy types that we all have. We all tend to kind of lean one way or other on the wheel. So maybe you may lean a little bit more to the east and you're like all in the possibility, but you're having trouble navigating the 3D. Or maybe you're in the north and you're really great with leadership, but you're all into the go, hustle, push, and trying to and learning. So the goal really is to be able to access all of these energies and cultivate that and have balance within them. So we're working from, the gift space or the conscious space instead of the wound.
Right.
So you get that understanding of that for yourself, but then you also can go fast and deep with a client because you can tell where they are and what is wanting to be cultivated in there, what they're wanting to cultivate. So I do love weaving that into the programs. And it's definitely, it's a major part of shaman school, but I'm starting to weave it into some of the other programs and in different ways, different access points, and for different people with different purposes,
That's very powerful. I worked in other systems with the archetypes, and like you said, it's been so healing for me to realize that I can play in all these different aspects. Like I don't, not just the one that I'm comfortable with. And and that like expands the possibilities of expression. I'm all about expression. So freedom of expression. And it sounds like you've really been expanding your freedom to express yourself. And how has that been changing your life? How is that? How is that inspiring you to go forward?
It's a great question. I feel like I'm just noticing I've always had a lot of thoughts, and I've had times in my life. I think looking back, I had a lot of my, of course, this is normal for like teenagers, but a lot of my teenage years and young adulthood was very opinionated, very strong opinions, maybe a little bit overboard. And I think that I made that bad for a long time. And I'm starting to come back around to that part of me. And some of that means calling BS on me or the system. Some of that just is like requiring that for me, like what is inspiring, exciting to me, I think, is that I'm spending less time trying to dance around delivering it in this really graceful way. I think that's what I was stuck on for a while, where it was like, oh, okay, I have this seeing and I want to bring it forward. And so I would start doing this whole dance and how to bring it forward, which I think in some ways was beautiful, but in some ways really like diluted the potency and also just recreated a lot of unnecessary work for me.
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah.
Right. The structures that they're beautiful, but they kind of weigh you down and limit your movement. So now that you've had this, kind of realization that you can move more freely in your business, and how has that affected your life in general? Is that really like allowed you more freedom in your personal life to be that way?
I think so.
And I'll tell you why I ask. And the reason I ask is because, a lot of the listeners here, some of them may not necessarily have a business. And I really feel like the message that you're sharing here with them today applies much broader than to, you can be working for a corporate, you could be, at home as a mother, it's like, it's all about the structures. And so that's kind of where I'm going with that, if that helps.
Totally. It does. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like to some extent, I've sort of uncorked myself.
I love that.
My voice.
Champagne though, right?
Yes, totally. Golden bubbles everywhere.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And and it's similar. You're totally right with like, having a seeing or having a knowing and feeling like, well, I don't want to step on toes, or I need to do XYZ before I can actually say this thing. I think really the gist of it is like, I started to see all the things I put in between myself and actually just like my instinctive knowing and my instinctive seeing that is actually really powerful and helpful. And so I've created and am creating more freedom in my life by just going direct with it. Yeah. Not to force anybody into anything or being like, you're doing a bad thing, or everybody needs to listen to me, or, for validation, but just because I have a seeing and it needs to be said.
Yeah.
And so instead of, again, kind of doing this dance where I'm putting all this stuff in between me and the seeing, or really me and the communication, I think is what I've really started to realize is like, I thought I had this idea that there's like all the self-doubt that you get into where you're like, oh, there's this thing that I see that's maybe happening in the workplace, or that like my mother-in-law does, and it's driving me crazy, but I can't actually say it yet. And this needs to happen first. And, I need these people to approve before I can do it. And I have to do it in this light way. And instead I'm just going straight and direct. And so not only is it actually creating a lot more connection with people, that is really what I was longing for. It's just saving me a lot of time.
And energy, right? That you can use to play and and let your body regenerate, right? I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel what you're saying. I think it's a beautiful way to live life. And I also feel like um, when you allow that to come more directly through, the potency of what you're saying is so much stronger, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no dilution of your energies. And what would you say? I'm just curious, what I want to come kind of back to your archetypes, because I'm fascinated with the shamanic archetypes, because I don't think I've worked directly with those. But what would that be? Is there an archetype that's associated with that? Like I think of like Artemis or somebody with the bow and arrow, but what would that be
Mhm.
on that wheel? Like what energy is that?
Yeah. Well, I think it probably can apply a little bit to all of them. And then of
Okay.
course you can have like either season, but like in this
Mhm.
case for me, the West is what I think I've been navigating, where it's our very empathic friend. Um
Okay.
Very flowy, very watery,
Mm-hmm.
tends to see a lot of things in relationship to other people. It's very relational. And so in that space, there can be a lot of really great seeings, but when we're in sort of that like wounded version, we get caught in that self-doubt, or
Okay.
where we like maybe overcomplicate things, or we don't make a move because we like are so we're tracking so many things.
Tracking so many things.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then it just sort of stays in here, plus the added piece or fear around like, what will people think? Or will I be judged? Or, how am I being perceived? And so that all kind of keeps it behind this like slight like wall of protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that where I'm at right now is like, and one of the gifts of the West is really taking that, all of that seeing and wisdom that really comes from like the compassion that the West
Mm-hmm.
is able to cultivate, but
Mm-hmm.
actually bringing it into the 3D, actualizing it, whether that's via saying something, whether that's putting a system in place, like
Mm-hmm.
bringing it into a solid form
A solid
in
form.
some way. Yeah.
Okay.
But you could be on the other side. So that's where I've been. Probably, I was talking about when I was younger and maybe a little bit like over the top. That
Mm-hmm.
might have been what I would call the South. And the South is more of a path maker. They can sometimes be really rebellious. And so if you're like in the wound, like not saying that if you're opinionated or you're speaking your mind, it's coming from a wound, but sometimes it can be. So for
Yeah.
me, when I was in the wounded version, then it looked a lot like, like there was no hesitation, there was no filter, and it would sometimes have hurtful things along with it, or, be to distance people from me,
Mm-hmm.
or make
Mm-hmm.
other people bad. It was like, for me, that time I was very political then too. So for me, that time was like seeing all the bad things and being like, you're doing the bad things, which actually wasn't helping anything. And it was more
I
about
see.
like, okay, what's the new thing that I actually want to see? So, it kind of depends on what season you're in. Like you might be in that, and if you're in that wounded South, it might be time for you to actually like pause and create more space and not be so quick to jump into saying what you think and see,
Mm-hmm.
and taking a pause and being like, whoa, let me actually see and navigate, maybe tuning into that West a little bit more. Let me see what's happening in the room. Let me see what's happening in my life. Where is this coming from? Let me actually
Mm-hmm.
feel in my body. Um, and
Yeah.
then versus maybe the West, which have spent a lot of time doing that. And now it's time for action and no
Action. Yeah.
hesitation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. That I feel that. And it feels very like a very balanced, whole and healed masculine, feminine, like approach to leadership and using your voice, where it's a mature, right? More mature leadership style. Not reactive, but thoughtful. Thoughtful but strong.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, with deep what is the word I'm looking for? Conviction, spirited, just
Mm.
but full of compassion. So I think we need a lot more leaders like that. And I do see it. I mean, that's a question for you. How do you feel like in the collective now that we're starting to see more of that kind of, leadership where people are saying what they need to say, but they're saying it in a way that's honoring, the rest of the collective, even though sometimes we really don't agree.
Sure. Yeah. What? Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely seeing it more, and I'm definitely seeing it more. What I'm noticing is I see more people, I think, trying things on and seeing, like, practicing, like, and that permission to, like, practice how we're expressing and what we're expressing, and it being okay if maybe that one didn't quite come out right or didn't quite land right, or, like, maybe if you look back, you would have done that differently a year ago, but, like, that's okay. We're all just trying to figure this out. Yeah. But I will say that I think that there are a lot of people that aren't using their voice, and I really want to hear from them.
Good point. I think that's very true. There's a certain level of, I don't know, I see two things, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts on this. But it's like there's a level of safety still. Like, is it safe, in certain situations? And the other thing is distraction, just complete utter, not even knowing that they have a voice still, right? And so that's kind of what I'm seeing in my world. But what are you seeing?
Can you say a little bit more about distraction?
So kind of caught up in the day to day, like just surviving,
Got it.
Yeah. And it might not even, like, might not be in a devastating state or anything, but it's just like they're kind of stuck on the wheel. I've been there. I know that one where I didn't use my voice for a really long time because I was just trying to keep up, with that machine that, society has for you. If you step on it, it's hard to get off sometimes.
Yeah.
And be independent thinker. So that's kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. And I understand that. And I think there's also times where you do just sort of have to buckle down and do the thing too.
You do.
And I don't think that I think you can have both. We were talking about that a little bit. I know this is from the lens of my business, but I realized I had created another thing where I'd created a lot of work between me and, like, what I wanted to say in my expression.
Yeah.
Just by the way I was doing my business and planning ahead and trying to do all these things. So it took a really long time to get anything out. And I actually just sort of cut out all of that stuff that I was putting in between me and what I wanted. And it actually just saved me a lot of time. Then I could just say it instead of having it to look a certain way or be designed a certain way. And I think the same is true just in our everyday lives, where those moments where we have that, when we're thinking something or we have that impulse to say something to somebody. And I think often for us, sometimes I think it's like around where we might also be focused on correcting people when actually it's like those impulses to be like, hey, you're really pretty, or like, hey, I just noticed your energy. Are you good? And even that is using your voice, in the office and those opportunities to connect. It doesn't have to be this, like, big proclamation that we deliver to the world. And I would love to see, let me see. So I think sometimes the distraction, it's like, which one comes first? Is the distraction what keeps us avoiding what we actually want to say and express? It's another place where we're like, well, I'll have time to actually express what I truly feel, maybe about my partner or my family or something like that, or what I see in the world, once I get to, like, this level of income, and then I can be safe, and then I have time to say the things. And it's like, nope, it's actually the other way around.
I agree.
The expression is what gives you the safety. And I also get being, not being sure if it's safe to do it. But I think that's maybe what's loosening up, is that there's so many of us that are like, you know what, we're just trying to figure this out.
Just practice.
Yeah.
Just show up and practice. No, yeah, no, this is, I'll just say for me, I was an incredibly passionate child and teenager, but I was so conditioned to be shy,
Mm,
just, and that for me to be doing this podcast was like brings so much joy to that spirited self of me, but I probably would never have dreamed of doing this, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even. So it takes a long time sometimes, but it's worth it to start to share, in ways that feel good. I think you would agree on that. I know you do. You have your own podcast. Why don't you want to share a little bit about how that has helped your expression and your
sure.
using your voice? I think that would be great.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I mean, it is very related because the same thing, I went through the same thing with that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is helpful for people that are listening, that I think sometimes when well, I'll speak for myself here, that for a long time when I would see somebody else, whether it's a business or a podcast or sort of that was like, being outspoken and being expressive,
Mm-hmm.
I had this thought that they were like real confident and like really knew, and were well like practiced and like really clear in themselves
Yeah.
and like knew that they had their message was important. And I realized it's kind of that's kind of true, but not really. Cause like for me, even it gets easier, but even just anything from a post to an episode on the podcast is like, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
And does this matter? And like, does it even make sense? And like, who am I to think that this is important or that this, like all of those sort of doubts to me are always there. And to me, what I've learned or what I have to do to remind myself, even because as I've been continuing to share on the podcast on Leading with Spirit, I'm also leaning into being less like scripted or planned and more
Yeah.
like off the top of my head and heart. And so sometimes that might mean they're a little bit messier, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that they're a lot more potent.
Yeah.
But what I've learned to do for myself is like when I'm in those moments of like, is this even important? Like, who wants to listen to this? Like, I'm not really all that. That's actually the thing that you need to have. That's like required for your, like, that's the sign that your voice is needed.
Yeah. I love that you
If you're
said that.
like, I don't know, then yes, it is. You're definitely needed.
Mm-hmm.
We probably need less of the folks that are like, no hesitation. My voice is really important. I'm super confident. What I'm saying matters. Like, we probably actually need less of that and more of the like questions, those of us that are questioning ourselves all the time.
Right. The authentic, more like, well, I wouldn't say the other ones are not authentic either, but
Right.
it's just it's a way of opening, I think, for spirit to come in, right, and lead you in what needs to be said. I think I always worried about that as well, like it needs to look, needs to look good, or look a certain way, or have a certain reach, and then what's guided me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, is that, does it feel good in my body when I'm doing it? And that has become the most important part for me, is like when I do it, I feel lit up and I'm like, okay, then this is something that I need to be doing. And hopefully, somebody, appreciates it. But I do think that I want to hear what you have to say about how, if you're somebody who wants to begin to become more free, and show up like this, do you have any wisdom to share, or a story that might be inspiring?
That's a great question too. Um, well, I would say Yeah, I would say tune into the like very subtle parts of your imagination or dreaming. If you
Mm,
sort of have those like moments where you see yourself doing something or looking a certain way or like being in nature in a certain way. And then again, this can be anything from like public speaking and being on stage to, having your candle and having, a prayer or a ritual in the forest
right.
to the way you're cultivating your family. Those are important. That's truth.
Hmm.
So, start leaning into that. Like, and then I would say, if anything, take it little steps at a time.
Mm,
I mean, it's taken, when I look back, like probably I'll use the lens of the shamanic work that I'm doing. Like in my case, when I look back, when I started this work, I would have those like fantasies almost of like, oh,
hmm.
being the medicine woman that people come to see. And of course, then I was like, shut up. Like, you're not even allowed, you're not even supposed to want that. You're not even supposed to imagine that.
Mm,
And like, come on. And then I remember and I continued to pursue this work because it was fun. It felt good to me. It was fun. There was not any like, I'm doing this so I become a certain person, or I'm doing this for a business or anything like that. It was just because it was fun for me, because I loved working with my spiritual gifts and working with
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And it gave me joy because for me, I mean, I can imagine you're probably the same way, Patricia. Like, I think a lot of us, especially women, but certainly men, sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox on a tangent for a second
Okay.
here,
It's all good.
is like, when we're like intelligent, compassionate people, like doing a lot of things in the ordinary 3D world, but we have this whole other like range and capacity. And
Hmm.
when we're not using it, it gets boring.
Yeah. Really boring. I need to be in those other realms regularly.
Yeah, because it's part of like, it nourishes my soul. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like also expression. And
Yeah.
I was finding that like when I didn't get to use that part of me, I would often, for me, I would often sort of make up for it by like causing problems or trouble somewhere else in my life. Because it's like, I'm bored. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Gotta
subconsciously mess something up
make
or do a
something to
little
do.
extra thing. Yeah.
Same way.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so like I'm just like scanning back through those stages of like how it came forward. And this was really probably over the course of maybe even 12 years for me. I mean, it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be that long, but
Yeah.
when I look back, that was just what it was for me. And of course, I'm still on that path of like coming more forward and being more direct and sharing myself. And I remember doing some energy healing work with a friend of mine. And it was the first time that I had ever said out loud, like, I think that I may have come here to be a spiritual guide. Actually, like, not only do I think that I may have come here for it, I want to be that.
Hmm.
I think that I've been designed for that.
Hmm.
And I'm saying it out loud to someone else. And that was like, that little thing was huge for me.
Yeah.
Very scary. I also squirmed for like 15 minutes before I actually allowed it to come out. But then from
Beautiful.
there, it's like, that's where it's like the little baby steps I think are so helpful, because a lot of us have this idea in our head that like changing something or altering something in our life or moving in the direction of what that little like fantasy is
Hmm.
means that we have to like do all this stuff and like get all this stuff together and then have this big reveal or presentation. And it's not like that. Well, I mean, it might be for some people, but by and large, I would say it's not. It's more like
Right.
taking those moments and doing little micro practices. So same thing, if you're learning to express more, or you're wanting to express more, like instead of going to like the most triggering, biggest thing, starting with those little tiny things and like just practicing, like, that's when like, oh, you're pretty, by the way. I just wanted to tell you that to the stranger when you normally wouldn't, because you wouldn't want them to think something
Right.
to, and then gradually starting to bring in more like maybe what you actually are wanting to express with your partner, or maybe like
Yes.
starting to whisper things at work that you normally wouldn't share with other people. so that you can build the confidence and build the trust that it's actually safe for you to do that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love that, how you worded that. It really feels like it boils down to, becoming better communicators, right? and more, having more intimacy, more authentic, conversations. But you don't have to, like, by all means, not go out and, and take down the world in one shot with opinions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But opinions are, I've been in discussions with people who are very opinionated, and half the time I'll just sit there and listen to everybody's opinions until they're done, and then I'll say something. And whether or not I'm ever heard, I don't know, but but I will speak up, and this is usually in rooms with a lot of, I'm not picking on males or anything, but male dominated meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, it can happen in anywhere where there's real strong personalities, but just to say that one little thing, right, gives you the courage to keep doing it. So I love how you said the micro steps, and that, I think that's really good. It's beautiful. Well, I want to give you an opportunity to tell people how they can connect with you if they want to learn more about, your offerings, and how they can just follow you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you can find me. Most of my social media channels are under Holton Healing Arts. And that's also my website, holtonhealingarts.com. And I do have a handful of different ways that we can work together, or you can just poke around and see if anything interests you. Lots of guided journeys and meditations and energy tools that are free on my website. And then I also have a free guide that teaches you how to do shamanic journey. So if that's
nice,
something that you're interested in, or it's new to you, it was really helpful for me. I still love meditation, and it's a great tool. And I found journey to be a little bit different and complementary in allowing me to access just different parts of myself and different parts of my gifts and the spirit realm, and also bring in a little bit more feminine practice into my spiritual practice. So it's less about like staring at a wall for 8 hours in silence and
getting to know movement. That wall really well.
So I have a free guide for that. You can find that on my website. Beautiful. Or you can DM me and I'm happy to send it to you. Yeah.
And great. I'll make sure that I have those links in the description for the podcast. And so we're coming to an end of our time together here today, although I think we could probably have many more conversations about a lot of things. But is there something, that you'd like to, like a pearl of wisdom, that you'd like to leave the audience with about, I don't know, where you're at in life or something like that, where you're going? Yeah.
What comes through first, what is something that has been on my mind and I have been sharing a lot lately, and kind of related to expression. Well, I guess that's a two-parter. One, it made me think of it with your reference to like being maybe in like a boardroom or something. That expression is like not always necessarily about it, that people responding or listening. It's that you say it.
Yeah.
And same thing with your desires. It's less about that you get what you want and more just about that you say what you want. And that's where a lot of medicine and magic is. I
love that. Thank you. That hits home. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being a guest today and having this delightful conversation. And I look forward to seeing what you are going to be birthing this year. Springtime is upon us here in the Northern Hemisphere. So
feeling it.
Right. So thank you everybody for tuning in. And I encourage you to check out SpiritBird's offerings. She's amazing. So have a beautiful rest of your day and stay divinely inspired. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Divinely Inspired Woman. Again, I am your host, Patricia Wald-Hopkins, and I am so glad that you joined us here today. I hope you left with some soul food to inspire your daily life. And if you would like to learn more about my work, please check out my website, patriciawaldhopkins.com, and you can find out more about my divinely inspired practice and tools. So, thank you again. Have a beautiful day. Hi. I'm dropping in here with an announcement about a program, a new mentorship that I am offering. It's called Voices of Gaia, and it's about bringing your voice, your leadership, your life in alignment with Gaia's guidance. So if you feel called to learn more about this program, it's a beautiful, rich program where we dive into your essence, and if you so desire, we develop your business around it and really blossom into your whole lifestyle, this wisdom from Gaia that wants to be spoken through you. So if you feel called, reach out to me at patricia@patriciawaldhopkins.com. That's patricia@patriciawaldhopkins.com. There's no hyphen between Wald and Hopkins. And I would just love to hear from you and see if this is a good fit. So thank you for tuning in. Have a beautiful day.